there's a tremendous number of activities that go at Cotton Incorporated to meeting these objectives, but what we'll do is just focus on kind of 4 buckets, main buckets that we're looking at for 2021 and really 2021 and beyond in terms of what we're trying to achieve. And before I get into the specifics of the program, I'd like to kind of maybe frame it by saying, we're in a situation right now when there's kind of both positives and negatives in terms of the things that are influencing the cotton market. I'll start with the negatives so I can finish with the positives. The negatives were being that in 2019, we started a trade war with China, or China started a trade war with us, depending on how you look at it. And that really began to kind of hurt the global textile economy and cotton in particular. We saw the pandemic and the impact on the global economy after that. And the unfortunate part of that is the apparel market, clothing market, and specifically is probably the hardest hit by the pandemic that of all industries. We had a couple of months where the statistics showed that textile demand was down about 80% over the previous year. Fortunately, that's coming back a little bit right now. Another negative factor is we just don't know if there's a second wave to the pandemic. I'm not going to try to forecast one way or the other, but that's always a possibility. And we're looking at very cheap rayon and polyester prices, particularly out of China. Prices for polyester have been in the 30s, 30 cents per pound, 35, 40 cents per pound. And the world price for cotton has been around 70 cents and to some extent lower than that. So the ratio of cotton to polyester is among the highest it's been. And we're facing reduced budgets in 2021. Now, we do have positives. The economies of the world are showing some improvement. We're seeing that cotton share in some key markets are beginning to improve or at least stabilize. We think the cotton sustainability effort is gaining traction, not just in terms of, we got the U.S. Cotton Trust Protocol, which we'll talk about, and we got the microplastics issue, which is a big negative for synthetics. And Cotton Incorporated and Cotton Council International, we're very actively promoting cotton and U.S. cotton around the world to try to move forward, cotton forward during this period. So what I'm going to do this morning is focus on 4 basic buckets in terms of what our activities are going towards. Number 1 is to maintain a strong global presence for cotton. We're going to focus on sustainability. We think that could be a positive for cotton, in particular U.S. cotton. Focus on technology development, implementation, why that's important in today's market. And last but certainly not least is a focus on improving farm profitability. We're in a period of low prices, and we have been for a year or 2 now, or not more. And we've got to do more to try to address directly farm profitability for U.S. producers. So we'll talk first about maintaining a strong global presence for cotton. And that starts with the U.S. market. The U.S. is the largest consuming market for cotton in the world. Is probably now, China is probably close to the U.S. But nevertheless, this has been the flagship. It has an influence on other markets. And we still do considerable amount of advertising at Cotton Incorporated. It's a little different today than what it used to be. Our current campaign is called Life is Uncomfortable. Your clothes shouldn't be. And this has been going on for several years now. And we do, in recent years, is a television commercial is no longer just for television. We use it in digital, internet, social media, et cetera. And more our impressions are being achieved through the digital world versus television. Also, we sometimes hear from growers saying, I don't see the commercials as much. And probably the main reason for that is that we have a very targeted market. Typically, we want to target men and women 18 to 49, or specifically, most likely, women 18 to 34 is really the primary group. And many times today, that's not, television is not how you reach them. It's more in the social media, internet, and we can be efficient, actually in some cases be more efficient in that medium than we can in television. This past year, I believe, was the first year that our digital budget was actually greater than the television media budget for our promotion. One of the things that we do in our promotions is we measure whether it works or not. And one of the things we looked at is does the commercial make you think of cotton differently than it did before? So we can test that. That's been positive. One of the messages that we've tried to deliver to consumers today is that cotton is not just comfort only. It can be a very versatile fabric for fashion as well. And we have a lot of metrics that we do test for cotton. We don't have the budgets that we had in the past in terms of television media buy. So one of the things that we've tried to do is leverage our assets in terms of partnerships. We have partnerships with brands and retailers to help them promote cotton. And we have a division at Cotton Incorporated, department called Strategic, it's now called Brand Partnerships, where we're working with brands and retailers to try to, again, to have joint promotions on cotton products, typically things that you can buy, not just things you see on the runway in fashion. And in any given year, we may have 3 major, sometimes 4 major events where we will partner with retailers. This is 2019. We don't have the 2020 because of the pandemic completed yet, but we have worked with Revolve, a online retailer. We've worked for the last couple of years on fashion events with Amazon. Bye Bye Baby is another. I think we've done Bed Bath Beyond and a few others. Typically, we try to get to around 3 major partnerships per year. At the same time, we recognize that influencers, people who are in the fashion business who have following, should be a target of Cotton Incorporated as well. So we've been working with bloggers who have a reasonably large following in terms of getting information to them, to help them carry the positive messages about cotton, and to get that out to their readership or their viewership as well. It's more impactful for many times for a third party to give some positive messages about cotton, particularly as it relates to sustainability, than it is for the actual company itself to promote it. So influencing the influencers is a key objective of ours at Cotton Incorporated, and has been for several years to help leverage our financial resources. In today's world, when you're dealing with the social media and other sort of social media, different Facebook and other platforms, is you have to have continuous refreshment. You can't have just one campaign and then do that for a couple of years and then move on to something else. So we've tried to have multiple messages, and in this past year or two, we've tried to focus on cotton in terms of health and wellness. There's some advantages of cotton that we can document. It's particularly in terms of like bedding, you get a better night's sleep. Cotton produces less irritation on the skin. There's a number of attributes that we can document that is positive for cotton. Again, we can measure the viewing of those types of promotional ads, as well as the recall and is our message getting through. In addition to health and wellness, we did in the past year or two promotions on our basic, most important product, which is denim. And we've also, consumers today in most industries, and particularly the food side, they want to know what they're eating. They want to know, more about the products than they've ever known in the past. So we had an ad, know what's in your clothes, and that's been very successful as well. So you have an overarching campaign, which is Life is Uncomfortable, but then you have these sub-campaigns that are primarily geared to the social media world, so that are continually refreshed with new information and new executions. So collectively, we're able to garner still a fairly large number of impressions. I think on average, we reach consumers today, our target audience, about 11 times per year. That may drop a little bit in 2021 with the budget being down, which I'll talk about a little later, but nevertheless, we can still have an impact on the most important market in the world, which is the United States. Now, outside the United States, we look at things a little differently. We do not have the resources to promote cotton to the consumer in hundreds of countries. So we have to be more focused. So we focus on the trade being the brands and the retailers. And one of the things that we've been working on for the last several years is trying to increase the perception of cotton in terms of its ability to engage and be part of the activewear market. Activewear is not just sports type apparel. Active today means just has some kind of performance feature, which even basic products today are demanding. And I'll talk about some of the research that goes behind it. So some of the promotions that we have focused on the fact that cotton can do a lot of things that that the brands and retailers may have not thought that we can be part of. So we have advertising, as you see, trade ads, and that could be followed up with actual product and discussions about the technologies that go into how you can develop cotton products that meet the needs of today's consumers. We do measure how we get product in the marketplace. Our supply chain marketing team and our product development implementation team, we try to collect data from the brands and retailers on the adoptions of technology. Many times those adoptions take place, we may not know about it. They may use their own particular names for various technologies, but we do know that there's a tremendous amount getting into the marketplace, and we track that every year. And even things like nonwovens that we're using, I think some cotton derivatives in there, looks like lotion of some kind, which is good. It's not a lot of volume for cotton in that particular product, but it's good for the image of cotton to show that cotton can be multiple things, and cotton is an actual good thing for the economy. We also are working, as I said, with not just the brands and retailers that you may be familiar with in the U.S., but it's now a global market. And the most important thing maybe to think about is that the value of, when I started at Cotton Incorporated a long time ago, the U.S. market tended to drive the price. In other words, the demand and supply for the U.S. Market was probably your best indicator of the price, or at least of the futures market, or the price received by the growers. Today, it really is a global market. It's how much cotton is used worldwide compared to how much we're producing. So anything that we can do to drive demand, either in our U.S. market, outside the U.S. market, if we can increase demand and reduce inventories, that is going to benefit growers in the United States for sure. So we are working again with hundreds of companies. Many of these you may not know, but they are major companies that have influence around the world in terms of textile products. Many of these are in Asia. One of the ways that we reach them is through typically through events. Now that's not going to happen in person this year and maybe the first part of next year, but we do have say events like the Great Ideas in Cotton, where we had over 300 attendees, 170 companies in 11 countries to talk about things like technology development, sustainability, and all things related to cotton as a way of getting our information across. Of course, every year that we have these one-on-one meetings as well, and there's other ways of getting to our customers as well. Fortunately, a couple of years ago, we recognized that we don't have the resources to engage with all the major players one-on-one that we would like. And we had to have some system to get information out in an effective way to help brands, retailers, and even mills, to the industry basically, to get a better understanding of cotton, what's available, the technologies. And we do this in a number of ways. So we have a platform called CottonWorks. It's a digital platform. We do have things like workshops in person, maybe not so much this year, obviously, with the pandemic, but we had typically 40 or 50 workshops per year, 1,300 attendees, and we're putting that information on this website as well, the CottonWorks website. We've had cotton in the curriculum, where we're trying to educate the educators. Those are universities that may have textile curriculum, and we want to make sure that cotton is getting its fair shake in the education side of things, because many of these people coming into the industry and the brands and retailers are graduates from schools and may have a degree from a textile related degree or a fashion degree. We want to make sure that they come in with the right understanding of cotton. And of course, we've been doing these farm tours now for a number of years, and that's been a big help. And also, unfortunately, again, this year, because of the pandemic, we're not able to do the in-person farm tours that we typically do, but this has been one of the most important tools that we have for educating brands and retailers, particularly on sustainability aspects of cotton. And hopefully in 2021, if not 2021, certainly beyond, that we'll be back to doing these farm tours. But when we get into the sort of the digital world, webinars are becoming more and more important. Now that we have this platform, we can do webinars and reach literally thousands of people. I was on a call recently with our staff in Hong Kong, and they put together a webinar on, I don't remember the topic, if it was sustainability or some textile manufacturing or a combination thereof, but I think they had well over 1,000 attendees for that particular webinar. So we can reach still a lot of people using sort of, again, the digital platforms that have been set up a couple of years ago. And we do track things like website usage. We know how many people come to our sites. We know that in 2019, we had almost a doubling of the increase in the sessions that were attended, page views, registrations. So we think this is, it's not going to replace one-on-one meetings and other events, but it certainly can augment, and it's been a critical piece of our marketing efforts, particularly during this pandemic. Eventually, we'll go back to like trade shows, which is a major way that we can show literally fabrics and show how cotton can be part of various, it could be, in this case, the Outdoor Retailer Show is about the activewear market. So this is held in the US, and we've had a major presence now for, I guess, 4 or 5 years. These typically take place multiple times a year. But we have a booth, we show specific fabrics and actually finished garments. And we've had increasingly amounts of interest, as the industry is always looking for something new, and cotton going into this market is certainly something new for many of these brands and retailers, certainly in recent years. So we think there's still opportunities for cotton in this market. You also have to recognize that in many cases, even before the pandemic, brands and retailers were looking at things, how to be more efficient. And this whole concept of the digital supply chain had been gaining in importance. In other words, ultimately, a brand and retailer would love to be able to analyze fabrics and silhouettes and garments in digital form, meaning seeing on the internet, maybe it's a 3D viewing, as opposed to having to be in person and looking at things, touching and feeling. Now, touching and feeling will always be important, but there's a lot you can do in the digital world. So we have, with the importers' support and actually encouragement in this area, we have been engaging with consultants to make sure that we are on top of the technologies. We have converted a lot of, or all of our fabric developments to a format that would allow that to be viewed in this medium, and we're staying on top of this because this will be a trend that will continue even sort of post-pandemic. You can be more efficient, and this could be an advantage for cotton, because I think, like I said, I think we're ahead of the game, and size doesn't matter, the size of the organization, if you can do this. So this is an initiative that's not just this year or next year, but it's probably going to be in the next decade or so. A second area of emphasis has been sustainability. And this is our goal. I'll give you the big picture goal. We want to convert the sustainability movement to a positive for cotton, and particularly U.S. cotton. We want to improve our metrics. We want to engage with the industry. We want to have targeted research, and then continue to improve our industry consumer communication on sustainability issues. So from a grower standpoint, if I were going to, sort of characterize it in something, a little saying, I'd say it's a short-term pain for a long-term gain. I know that as we talk about some of these, like the trust protocol and having to kind of do some of the things that are going to be required of the U.S. industry going forward, it may seem like a problem in the short term, but we really do think this could be a positive for U.S. cotton industry. So I'll talk about a little bit of that briefly in just a moment. Why do we think this is important? Well, one of the reasons is because consumers already believe that cotton is the most sustainable fiber for the environment. We do our own research, independent research, but we sponsor that. 90% of consumers say cotton is safe for the environment. Polyester and nylon rayon is about half of that for cotton. So if we can, again, the consumer is predisposed to thinking that cotton is a positive. So we just have to make sure we can back it up with the metrics. They can be supported. And as this becomes a greater and greater issue going forward, we think that cotton, this is a competitive advantage for cotton, particularly with the microplastics issue, which I'll also briefly touch on. So our 5 areas of sustainability: 1, we want to support the U.S. Cotton Trust Protocol and sustainability goals. You'll hear more about the protocol. I think maybe Bruce may have talked about that before, Bruce Atherley from the CCI. We are supporting the protocol with our technical expertise as well as financial support. We contributed $1 million to the development of the protocol in 2019 or 2020. We have another $500,000 earmarked in 2021. Again, that's the U.S. Cotton's sustainability program for brands and retailers that require this extra level of verification. So again, you're going to hear more about this as in the coming months or years. And I would say we encourage participation in this program. Like I said, it could be a short-term pain to kind of do some of these things, but it really will help us move our cotton as we go forward. Microplastics and cotton degradation: all fibers, all textile products shed, and fibers get into waterways and make their way into the ocean. Cotton degrades, synthetic fibers don't. And that's going to be a problem. It's a growing problem for the polyesters of the world and nylons. Cotton has got a good story to tell there. So we want to continue the research there. We want to stay engaged with the sustainability organizations. They have influence over brands and retailers. So our team, we're having to kind of engage, and sometimes it's unpleasant, but we think we've made some progress there. We want to improve our communications on sustainability, and also the metrics of sustainability, the assessments, life cycle analysis, whether you're talking about cotton or cottonseed oil, or just the basic metrics that are calculated by organizations like Field to Market. We are engaged with them, again, to make sure that cotton has a fair shake. Our basic platform for just communicating information about U.S. cotton for the last several years has been Cotton Leads. That was started in late 2013. I remember that during that summer, Mark Lang from the council and I went down to Australia to meet with the Australians, and we decided that with it seemingly the world was moving away from looking at industrial countries as sustainable, and we felt like we needed our own platform to communicate some of the things that were happening both in the U.S. and Australia. So we formed this partnership called Cotton Leads. At the end of 2013, we had 2 partners, meaning 2 brands, retailers who were on board with the messaging of U.S. cotton and Australian cotton. That has grown to 591 at the end of 2019. I think that's over 600 today. So it's a testament that we're using this platform to get that information out about U.S. cotton and the improvements that have taken place over the years, again, verified with the overarching metrics. Again, some brands and retailers want more. They want verification, and that's where the U.S. Cotton Trust Protocol comes in. So these are not independent of each other. One is for those who are satisfied with what we're doing, and some brands and retailers want that extra level of verification. So we better make sure we have the protocol up and going so that we can meet that need as well. This is where we have an advantage. I've been talking about this for a couple of years now. If you take cotton and you take polyester and you put them in wastewater, cotton degrades 92% in 33 days, polyester only 6%. This is research that was funded by Cotton Incorporated at North Carolina State University. If it's in fresh water, cotton is 80% gone in 33 days. Polyester doesn't degrade at all. And cotton in salt water is about half degraded in 33 days. Polyester, only 4%. So if you think about fibers making their way into the waterways, cotton has a much better story. Cotton is cellulose, and most likely it's gone. In some cases, if it's not gone, it does not pose a hazard. There's no evidence to suggest that a cellulosic fiber in the water is going to be a problem, but there's multitude of evidence that there's a lot of plastics in the water, and I've seen statistics that show that on average, because we eat fish, we eat salt, we eat various things that come from the sea, that we ingest the equivalent of a credit card's worth of plastic a week. That's pretty scary. And so this is gaining traction in terms of an issue, and we think cotton has a positive story in this. It can be a competitive advantage. One of the things that we did a couple of years ago, or 2019, was the Sustainability Summit. This was a way of communicating a lot of what has transpired with U.S. cotton and cotton in general and synthetic fibers to leading sustainability executives. And we had about 100 invitation-only folks show up for our Sustainability Summit. And one of the most effective parts of this was hearing directly from growers. In this case, we had Lacey Vardaman, I think maybe on this call, talk about what her family has been doing in terms of sustainability over the years. It was very effective. And you see next to her was Nathan Reed from Arkansas, who also talked about some of the sustainability things that was taking place on the farm and how things have changed. And this was really eye-opening for all these brands and retailers. They had no idea this was taking place. So we found that one of the most important ways of communicating is to let the producer do it. And it's more effective than sometimes the suits talking about sustainability. To the far left is Jesse Daystar, Dr. Jesse Daystar, who is head of our sustainability division at Cotton Incorporated and has been with us for now a couple of years. More and more in the area of sustainability, it's about like, how do you repurpose, how do you recycle, circular economy. We started this with the jeans recycling program, Blue Jeans Go Green, which gets recycled into insulation, but we're going to be doing more. We're looking at how cotton could be maybe converted back to cellulose and ultimately used as a fuel, because throwing things in landfill is not going to be the answer as we go forward. Technology develop. I'll just go through this kind of quickly. That's important. Consumers, think about this. Consumers don't buy cotton; they buy apparel and home furnishings that may contain cotton. We hope it contains cotton. So we have to continue to make products that meet the needs of the marketplace. And we have a lot of technologies. I won't go into the details of what each one of these are, but we have developed technologies. We've integrated those into the fabrics. We know there's a demand for them because we're getting a lot of traction. Some of these technologies are now almost a decade old, but we continue to have more and more demand for these. And things like a lot of these are going to what we would call the active wear market. In other words, something where it requires a performance characteristic. Today, we have almost 200 suppliers of these technologies around the world. We're adding more each year. The difficult thing getting something like this off the ground is if you go to a brand retailer and say, we have a technology, they say, well, who can supply it? If you go to the suppliers, they'll say, well, who's going to ask for it? And so it's a chicken and egg thing, but we've been able to work both sides of the supply chain. And now we've gained this traction that's continuing. I mean, we have to continue to refresh these technologies as we go forward. One of the challenges that cotton is faced with is the fact that over time, consumers are wanting lighter weight fabrics. That has two implications for cotton. Number one is you need less fiber for the same number of garments, like denim. As an example, 14-ounce denim was common in 2007. Now it's a 9-ounce denim in 2018. And the second issue, in some cases, cotton, we can't make it that light in some products without using a little bit of synthetic fiber. So we are doing more developments today with blends, still dominant with cotton, but that is a challenge. The good news here is that downward trend has finally stabilized, so we don't see continued loss of markets because the weights got lighter and lighter. These are just metrics that we use in our fabric developments. There's no need to go through the details, except we do track these things, and we know that they're making their way into the industry. And I did mention the events like technology events. This was called Great Ideas in Cotton, where we talked about sustainability, fashion, and innovation that took place in Hong Kong. I referenced it earlier. Our chairman, Berrye Worsham, attended that event. We had 350 plus attendees in more than 10 countries. and it was a great way of kind of getting all these messages rolled into one event. Now, with the pandemic, that's not going to happen in 2021. We typically will do these every 3 years or so, but hopefully by 2022, there's going to be another one of these. Good way to get that message across. The last component, not the least, is farm profitability. Ag research, I think most growers are familiar with the kind of things that we do in ag. Everything from weed strategies, herbicide resistance. We've been spending a lot of time on FOV4 research, long-term research as well, like robotic harvesting. We support the winter nursery. We're doing more in cottonseed than we've done in the past. So these don't change that much from year to year. Sometimes the priorities do change, but the types of work we're doing, I think we now work with over 350, maybe as many as 400 projects throughout the cotton belt. I mentioned cottonseed research in 2 areas. Number one, we know that if we're producing more cotton and the number of cows staying about the same, dairy cattle, and the cottonseed crush market is not growing, that we're going to have to feed more. So we're doing ways to see if there's research to show that we can increase the amount of cottonseed in rations for dairy cows, as well as expand the market maybe to other cattle, beef cattle as well. We're very excited with Cottonseed Oil Research, looking at potential health benefits. We started the research looking at young people who are healthy. We did see a reduction in cholesterol among that group. We're now testing older consumers who are at risk or have higher cholesterol to see if this can be replicated. It's been done with humans as well as with mice and rats, and that confirms there's a biological reason why potentially cottonseed oil could be a plus. We're going to be continuing this research for the next couple of years, and hopefully can change the narrative on cottonseed oil in terms of being a healthy oil. We shifted our marketing effort to our PR group, so we've been doing some new campaign on Wholeseed, targeting nutritionists to try to increase the cottonseed in rations, as well as cottonseed oil. We can't really make health claims right now, but there's certainly other benefits to cottonseed oil. Again, this 15% of the grower's revenue is coming from cottonseed on a normal year, so this is obviously an important market. EFS is something that helps growers because it helps us sell directly cotton to our customers around the world. It's a cotton management handling tool. Millions of bales of U.S. cotton is used to our EFS, which was created in the 1980s. So we continue to focus on expanding that as we need to export more and more cotton. And of course, contamination is a huge issue for particularly plastic contamination for U.S. cotton. And we work with the council and directly and indirectly on looking at ways of to reducing that, including looking at technologies to remove plastics at the gin level, even at the textile mill level. So that's going to be ongoing in the future. So in summary, where we are next year, we're going to be about 8%, or I think 7 or 8% down in terms of most of our program dollars. If you were to break out our budget for 2021 at $80 million, about 58% of our budget goes to marketing type activities. As you can see, 38% for consumer, 20% for supply chain. And then our ag and textile research efforts collectively are about 35%. So as a rough rule, and then administration, IT, finance, and other miscellaneous is about 7%. So if you just took the research and marketing as a rough rule of thumb, just among that, it's about a 60-40 split. So we're about a 60% research marketing organization, and roughly, maybe slightly less, 40% on research. Compared to previous years, our research effort is a little higher, and that is because with the budget down, we don't want to cut research. It's hard to stop and start research projects compared to marketing efforts. So hopefully, we're probably looking at 2021 being kind of a tough year as well. 2022. But hopefully in the years to come that the budgets will begin to rise. But in this meantime, we're continuing to look for ways to be more efficient so we can still be very effective at these reduced budget levels. So that kind of summarizes the what we're trying to do. I left out a lot of stuff, but I do want to thank everybody, the Cotton Board, for putting this on. I think it's a great way to reach our stakeholders, but also thank all of you for your continued support of the Cotton Research and Promotion Program. And I know our other staff, and many of our staff who are going to be on this program, are really looking forward to continuing that dialogue with producers.